with ORMs, working with an ORM, one of the ORMs. But before working with ORM, I want to introduce. I want to introduce us to. Can you hear me now? Is it better now? All right. I'll be sharing my screen. Okay. Sorry, please give me a moment.
You muted.
Wow, I've been talking. So let me just come again with everything I've said. I said we are initializing a new Node.js project by saying npm init y. Let me just delete this and say npm init y. And we have our packages like JSON. And don't forget, I said I'll be introducing us to TypeScript. And what is TypeScript? TypeScript is JavaScript with syntax for types. So with TypeScript, we are still writing JavaScript code. However, we'll be doing type declaration. So we are working with TypeScript. We do something like name and you put the data type string. So you do something like, let's say we want to create a function, something new that will accept two parameters. Let's say the first parameter is the first parameter can be name and the second can be age. Would have to specify that this name must be a string and the age must be. You can see after I added the type declaration, my IDE already detected that I'm writing TypeScript. So you just have to work with type declaration in JavaScript. That way, if you have an error in your code base, just like we have here, if you have an error in your code base, your IDE will tell you before executing. So that way you can be able to understand that, okay, there is a potential error here, which you handle before your code goes to production. So how do we use TypeScript? Come to documentation. TypeScript for JS developer. Yes, we are JavaScript developers. And let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see documentation. All right. Okay. So what we are going to do is just say using TypeScript, or let's say TypeScript with JS. TypeScript with JS. Yes. We want to visit somewhere. We're supposed to install some things. We are supposed to install. Okay, yes. So if you are working with TypeScript, let's start from here. TypeScript is an open source language maintained and developed by Microsoft. So it is owned by Microsoft. Basically, TypeScript add additional syntax to JavaScript to support a tighter integration with your editor. Your editor is your IDE, that's your VS Code. It catches error early in your editor or in the CI/CD pipeline. CI/CD means continuous integration and continuous deployment, right? So if the error is not being catched in your IDE, your deployment script will catch the error, and that way you can write more maintainable code. So let's write our first TypeScript code. We want to declare. Let's just create. Let's say index.cs. That's our to create a TypeScript code, a TypeScript file. You'd have to use the .ts extension, and for JavaScript you use .js. So for TS you use TypeScript you use .ts. And what do we want to do? Just like we have here, we want to create a type user. So just like we have string, we have integer, we are creating a new type called user. And this user is expected to be an object that will have a name, which is string, right? It will have age, which is a number. And yes, then we want to have a function. A function, the function will be is adult. And this function is expecting to receive a variable or a parameter. Yeah, it is expecting to receive a parameter. Very good. Expected to receive a parameter. And what type of parameter are we expecting? We are expecting a user. And where is this user gotten from? This user type we created. If I comment this out, you see I have an error here. Cannot find user. So you need that user declaration somewhere. So we are expecting an object that has this attribute as the user. And again, we want this function to return a boolean. You can see the way we are declaring our type. And as you can see, I'm already getting my IP is already telling me something is wrong here. Why? Because I'm saying that this function will return a boolean, but it is not returning anything. Let's read this error. It says a function whose declaration type is neither undefined or void or any must return a value, and we are not returning anything. If I come here and say return hello world, you can see I'm already having another error, which says type string is not assignable to type boolean, or some people call it boolean. I prefer to call it boolean. Type string is not assignable to type boolean. So which means we have to return a boolean. And what is a boolean? Don't forget I said a boolean is either true or false. Or false, right? So that is that about type declaration. And we want to say return user.age is greater than or equal to 18, which means this, if the age of this user, if this condition is true, it will return true. If it is false, it will return false. So that means if the age of the user is 18 above, it will return true, which is a boolean, and if it is false, it will return false. You can see our ID is not giving us any error. Why? Because our code is as it's expected to be. So let's create our user. You can say constant what? Justin should be a user. This type declaration is not so necessary, but you can add it. Should be a user, and you can see it is already telling me type objects is missing the following attributes. Okay. Type object is missing the following attributes from type user, name and age, which means we have to include the name and the age. So we can say name is Justin and age, let's say the age is 20. You can see we're not having any error. If I remove this, our error is back. Why? Because you can see property age is missing. You just have to put it. That is why this is TypeScript and it is different from JavaScript. JavaScript allow you to do everything anyhow you want it, but TypeScript you have to follow what you have to follow the pattern. And then we can now say constant Justin is adult. We want to call the adult method and pass in Justin, which is our user. And yes, so this is basically how a TypeScript code looks like. Let me write this thing in JavaScript so you see. I can say index.js, index.js, and let me just copy everything from here. First of all, we don't use type declaration in JavaScript, so we are removing this. And secondly, we are not telling our method the type of user it is expecting. We are not telling the method the type of data type it's returning. And also this place, we are not using type declaration as well. So this is JavaScript and this is TypeScript. The reason I'm having this error of duplicate implementation is because these guys have the same name. So if I rename this to, let's say something.js, okay, should really do. Yes. Same duplicate function. Let's just rename everything. Let's say user is adults. So I think let's just change this to Justin now. And let's say it's adults. Should be user is adults. Shouldn't be having this whole align. Cannot be declared start. Let me comment this out. The problem is with that JavaScript file I created. So let's just change this to something else. User is adults. So adults is over 18. It's over 18 and it's over 18. So yes, this is what a TypeScript code looks like. And for JavaScript, we are not doing any type declaration. Just I write everything like that. Are you getting me? So just like we have here, we said, what does TypeScript consist of? TypeScript consists of two main components: the code itself, that's the JavaScript code itself, and the type definition. So these are the JavaScript code, and you see that we have type definitions here. So they are strongly typed. The code is the regular JavaScript code with additional TypeScript specific syntax for type annotation. So this thing we did here is called type annotation. This one and this one. These are type annotation. When TypeScript code is compiled, all the TypeScript specific parts are removed, resulting in clean JavaScript that runs in any environment. In any environment. Yes, in any environment. So what we are going to do is that we are going to install. Okay, let's proceed. All right, let's read this. Type definition describes the shape of existing JavaScript code. Type definition describes the shape of the existing JavaScript code. They are usually in .d.ts file and doesn't contain any actual implementation. They only describe the types. These definitions are essential for interoperability with JavaScript. These definitions are essential for interoperability with JavaScript. So this is what we are going to do. I don't want to pause with this whole documentation. For example, when using Node.js with TypeScript, you need the type definitions for Node.js APIs. They are available via. Let me show you something in our previous code base. If we come somewhere, we used one follow come Node.js package the other day. Used one follow come Node.js package the other day, or module rather. I'm trying to remember the name. So first thing first, we want to come here and come to our packages.js. Say, sorry, give me a moment. All right. So first of all, we want to change the type of our project. We want to change it from the common JS to module. So we are coming to our package.json, change the type from common JS. The default is common JS. That is why you're not saying it here. The default is common JS, common JavaScript. So what we want to do is we want to change it to module, right? And again, for the dev dependencies, we want to install TypeScript. We want to install TypeScript npm. Let's just follow the documentation. So this guy said we should install types node. So what this type node will do for us is that anything we are doing in JS, it will import, because by default, this is our project, this is our book project, doesn't have the type declaration. If you check here, you'll be seeing something like any. Our Morgan is any. Okay, our app is an Express app, probably defined with JS. Yes, you can see any, which means even Express so the thing is when we require with this common JS, when we require a module, it is possible that our code base does not understand the structure of that module. But with the type definition, which is something like at type something, we are helping the code base to understand the structure, the type definition for that code, for that module that we are importing. And what's type definition? Something we have here. So let's import from JS. And 2 packages installed. You can see if you come to our packages.json, we have this here. Now we've imported the type modules. We want to, these type definitions allow JavaScript to run, to understand Node.js APIs and provide proper type checking and auto completion when you use functions like fs or something. So back to my code base here. If I'm using type definition, when I type something like express, the code base will be able to suggest other methods that are available on express. Something like JSON, something like static. Are you getting me? Let me come back to this. Okay, let me just come here and say express.js with TypeScript, so we can follow the documentation from there. Express.js. I don't think this is what I'm looking for. All right, how to set up TypeScript with JS and Express. So we are coming to somewhere here. We've done this already. We have this already. All right, we want to install Express, npm install Express. If you check here in our packages.json previous projects, we have Express, and we even have .env. Here we'll be working with .env as well, so .env. And even this guy says we should install .env, so let's install .env. And after that, the .env package is blah blah blah. You know that's already. Yeah, let's just copy our env from here and put it here. .env. I hope I'm still in this meeting. All right. So we have our .env. Everything still remains the same. Want to make this social app. Coming back after having everything in our .env. So what I did here, scan what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's just follow everything as it is in this blog. So we have everything here very similar to what we have in our previous code base. This is our index.js. Let me just copy and come here, let's delete this index.js, and we can delete this as well and say index.js, just our regular JavaScript file. And in our packages.json, let me remove this as well. So we have everything like the normal Node.js projects. We have Express, we have our app. We're not using Morgan, we're not using Mongoose, we're not using Bootstrap, we're not using any of these guys yet. Basically, what we want to do is just to send something like this in our index route, and I'm going to remove this as well. Remove this, log, remove everything. Remove this as well. Upload this. So we have a very basic Node.js app here. We are importing our Express, creating an app, creating a variable for our port, creating a variable for our port, defining our index route. This is the index route, and the app should be listening to the port. So everything is still very much basic. And if I come here and say no index.js, we have our server listening to port 3000. What we want to do is to say have a script called dev. What should this script do? We want to say load on index.js. Yes. So we want to say npm run dev. And yes, we are good. If we visit our page, 3000, you can see we have Express TypeScript server. Everything is still very much basic, right? So now we want to install some TypeScript. We begin by installing TypeScript as development dependency. So what does development dependency mean? It means this dependency, you can see here we have dependency and we have dev dependencies. So any dependency on the dev dependencies are only needed when we are developing. We don't need it on the production. That's on our server. We only need it here in our IDE. As a dev dependency, additionally, we will install types declaration. We will install type declaration packages for Express and Node.js. So we already installed for Node.js. We'll be installing for Express as well. Which offer type definitions in the form of the declaration file. So we don't have to worry about all those guys. All we do is to install. Let me come here. Say npm install. We put the flag B to tell this our code base these packages we want to install are dev dependencies, dev packages. You don't need them in production. And then we want to install at types Express. That's that definition for TypeScript for Express.js. And we've installed for Node.js as well. We'll be installing TypeScript as well. So just add TypeScript. So here I want to install two packages, types Express and TypeScript. I want to install them in my dev dependencies. So if I press enter, I have the packages here, TypeScript, type definition for Express, type definition for Node. Yeah, this is what we have. Different versions. That doesn't really matter here. All right, generating a TS TypeScript configuration file. So in our project, we have our TypeScript configuration file. Every TypeScript project utilizes a configuration file to manage various project settings. The tsconfig.json to be a JSON file, just like this package.json. The tsconfig.json file, which serves as JavaScript configuration file, outlines these default options and offer the flexibility to modify or customize compiler settings to suit your need. The tsconfig.json file is usually placed in the project root. To generate this file, use the tsa command to initialize a TypeScript compiler. So what we are going to do is to come back to our code base. This command we have here, npx TSC init, right? Okay. All right, npm txt init somewhere here. Yeah. So if I press enter, I'll have my tsconfig file here, and you can see it's giving us some other so many things, so many document. But basically, the default settings we need are there already, which is the target, which is ES6. The module is common JS. I think this should be let's be that way. That's the default. ES module inter true. It means additional JavaScript with its support. And this file will be pushed to our code base. So if you need to check, these are the documentation. These are the things these attributes are supposed to do. So if you set any value to this, it will tell you what it is meant to do. So you can go back and go through it. So now that we have our tsconfig file, okay, now this is it. The ones that are not commented. Target is ES6, ES 2016, module is common JS, which is true, and so many other configs like that. All right, one crucial, let's just go through everything here together. Upon opening the tsconfig file, you notice several other commented out compiler options, just like we have them here. Among all these options, compiler options is a mandatory field. So come here, search compiler options. Yes, it is inside this object. Yeah, it is inside the objects that we get. It's a mandatory field that must be specified. Here's a summary of all the default options that belongs inside the compiler options. So these again are the ones that are not commented out. So these are the default options. Target enables specifications of target JavaScript versions. That's the compiler with output. So if there's a particular version of JavaScript you want your compiler to output, because at the end of the day, TypeScript will convert the code based JavaScript before executing it. And you want to be able to set the version, the language version of JavaScript that it will be converted to. Module facilitates the utilization of module manager and compile JavaScript code. Common JS is supported and is a standard in Node.js. Okay. Toggle strict type for checking. Enables compiler in ES6. Common JS module. Okay. Okay, when set to true, it bypasses the type checking for default library declaration files. Plus consistent cascading. There are so many other configurations there that you want to go through and know what they do. By default, the value of this option is set to the project root. Change it to this as shown below. So this out directory means when our code base is compiled, when it is being converted to a JavaScript file, from TypeScript to JavaScript, which folder should it put it? We want to. I don't think I have that here. So let's search. All right. First of all, we want to uncomment it and say it should go to the dist folder. So what is going to happen here is to create a new folder called dist. So yeah. As you can see, specify the output folder for all emitted files. So that is that. While there are probably other configurations you can add in your types, the options are basics. Above are basic specifications that can help you generate. Okay, that can help you get started rather. So you can now update the main field in the packages.json field file to index.js to this, this is distribution, short form of distribution. This in index.js, because the TypeScript code will compile from source, from the SRC directory to this. So let's just come here. We are changing this to from index.js, from this index folder to this index.js. So what is going to happen is that we're going to have a folder like this, and inside that folder we have something like index.js. Are you getting me now? So again, I'll delete that. It should be automatically created when the time comes. So let's continue. Now, transforming our JavaScript Express server code into TypeScript, into TypeScript isn't as complicated as it may seem. Begin by renaming the file from index.js in the SRC directory to index.ts. So we were supposed to put it in that inside the SRC folder. The SRC folder is where all your code, your core code will be. So he said we should rename it to index.cs rather, which is a TypeScript file. A moment. So we should rename it to a TypeScript index.cs, which is a TypeScript file. As you can see, I'm even already getting errors here, but we'll continue. And here we say, you can see, just like we have here, we are going to convert this thing to an import. So this thing I just did here, let me just do it manually. Import express from express. So instead of doing this require, we can just import directly. And now we have our express, just like we have here. Import express from express. This place too, just this.env, we want to say import .env from .env, right? And then we want to say .env.config. So this thing I just did here, this code here is the same thing as saying .env is what? Require.env and then saying .env.config. This thing here, this one line, is the same thing as this two. So what I just did here was to change this require to an import statement by saying import.env from .env. So I'm removing this. .env still remains the same, just like we have here. So I'm removing all these guys as well. Everything still remains the same. And okay, so now we are having type declaration. We can now say express is an express app. And where is express imported from? She's imported from express. So we imported the whole express module here, and then we want to import some types as well, express. And again, we have this already. So we have the port, but what this guy did here is, if the port is not available, let's say we don't have it in the EMP, it should use 3000 or 3000. So that is what it is, and everything still remains the same. So we are not making any additional change to the code. Now we want to run this guy. I believe we'll be having an error. If we say node SRC, because we move the index file to the SRC folder and say index.ts, you can see we now have an error saying unknown file extension. Don't forget, I said node is built to run JavaScript files, not TypeScript. It is built to run JavaScript files, not TypeScript. So what we can do, if you check this this guy again, running TypeScript in Node.js, okay, let's start from here. Now, if you attempt to execute index.cs file using Node, just like we did, similar to what we did with our index.js, you will encounter an error, which is the same error we encountered. Where is the error? one is even saying import something. That's a. But the error we had was that the file extension is not supported, it's unknown. So what are we going to do? This is because Node doesn't inherently support the direct execution of TypeScript file. The next session, blah, 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 blah. So here we are going to run a TypeScript file. So what we are going to do is say, instead of saying node src index.ts, we are going to say npx, then ts node, right? Then src index.ts. So this should be npx, not npm. npx. So what npx does is that it allows us to run packages that are not installed in our code base. So ts node is not installed in our code base and want to use it to execute index.ts. So we are going to press enter and it is asking me, do I have ts node installed? Okay, need to install the following packages, ts node. Why? Because I don't have it installed. So I press y, enter. That should install. I think it will be installed here. I guess it is globally installed. Anyways, we have, if you check now, we have server listening to port 3000. Let's check here again. And our server is still working. However, we don't want to be doing this every time. We want to use node mod. And how do we use node mod? We have node mod installed already. We can install ts node in our dev dependency. So I'll just come here and say npm install as a dev dependency ts node. So yes, we have ts node as our dev dependency. What we are going to do is just say, so when we say build, when we say npm run build, what this will do is that it will compile our TypeScript code and put it in and convert it to JavaScript, then put it in our dist folder. So we are doing that with, I think, npx txs. If I run npx tsx here, let's see what we have on tsc rather, tsc. You can see I now have a dist folder and I have index.js. And everything I've written here is being converted to JavaScript, as you can see. So again, I want to delete this for now and come to our packages.js. Now we have our build folder. So it is what you have in your dist folder that you are going to host on your server. This is what you have in this folder you are going to host on your server. In the dist folder. So for start, that's if you want to start our project in our local server. Let's say we want to start it from the dist folder, not the index. We want to start from the dist folder. I want to start the actual JS file that our compiler has created. This index.js. It's going to do the same thing, listening to server 3000, but this time around using the JS file. So we have that already here. And again, finally, we have node mod index.cs. I hope this is it. So if I come here, npm run dev, I'm not sure this is all right. So with our node mod, we are able to start our index.cs. We are now, this time around, we are starting with index.ts. And as we are saving, everything is restarting. So that is that about using TypeScript for Express.js. Firstly, we imported the type declaration for what we are using. We are using Express, we are using Node. We import the type declaration as dev dependencies. Also, we imported TypeScript as well, because definitely we are using TypeScript, we'll need it. And TS Node. TS Node is for running TypeScript file. So for the actual dependencies, we have the TNV and Express, just like we had it the other previous project. So in our index.ts, what is happening here is that we will be working with JavaScript files again. We'll be working with TypeScript, and with TypeScript, you can put your type declarations, which is something like this type annotation rather, which is something like this. That was a long one. Are we all still connected? So this project here is just a basic Express.js project. As a matter of fact, an empty Express.js project. There's nothing inside it, just this index route. And now we are using TypeScript. You can see there's not much difference from a TypeScript code and a TypeScript and a JavaScript code. Just that this one is with this one makes our code base very much safer. Are we good on that? Are we all still connected? So again, let me reiterate. I created a simple Node.js project with our npm initialization, just like we usually do. And we added, okay, so after initializing our JavaScript project, we created the csconfig.json file. And this is the file that will give our TypeScript compiler, you can see compiler options, compiler our configurations. And if you check this place again, how do we create a tsconfig file? Or check the actual TypeScript documentation. Csconfig. Okay, I think we got it here. With npx init something. All right, npx tsc, this is TypeScript init. So npx allows us to run packages that are not installed in our code base or in our system. tsc is not installed in our system. tsc command is different from TypeScript. So ts is not installed and we want to initialize it. So npx will allow Node.js to get it from wherever it is and do whatever we want to do with it. So this command will create our tsconfig.json file where we have all these guys. And the only change we made here is this @drr, which is telling our compiler, which is TypeScript, that the files you will be emitting, you should emit them inside the distribution folder, inside the dist folder, so that once we want to host this project, we can just pick everything from that file and host it wherever we want to host it. Or again, let me just say the actual code that will be running our server will be inside the dist folder. That's the distribution folder. And if you come here, there are so many things. You can see remove comments. So if I enable this, that means by the time I compile my code, I won't see any. Let me even do that so you see. I can come here and say starting Express server. And if I run npm run build, and if you visit you can see I have this comment here But if I come to TS config and on comments this, remove comments, I want it to be true. I want it to remove comments. And if I come here, you can see the comment is not there. So just like I said, the TS config file is just for you to configure how you want your system to, how you want your compiler to behave. So yeah, that is the basic knowledge you need with TypeScript. As we are moving further, we'll be learning more. I said today we want to work with an ORM. Now, what is an ORM? What is an ORM? Let me explain it in a terms you don't understand. An ORM is a package or a library that we can use to communicate with our database without having to write database queries like SQL queries. If you can remember in our last class, in our previous project, we were working with something like this service where we were doing select all from order by ID, sending in descending order. And we're writing SQL queries, right? But with ORM, we won't have to do that. We won't have to do that. So let's go to, this is Prisma ORM. There are so many other ORMs like that. JS ORMs. We have type ORM. We have Sequelize. I don't think I should use Sequelize inside. We have type ORM. We have Prisma. We have objection.js, we have bookshelf, and many other. So today we'll be working with Prisma ORM. So we are working with the ORM. We go to products, go to ORMs. You can see they have monthly download of 11 million on NPM and 41K stars on GitHub. So let's go to quick start. And if we come to create TypeScript project and set up ORM. So if you want to work with ORM, it is always good you work with TypeScript. So that was why I had to take us through TypeScript first. And again, after that, we want to install Prisma as a dev dependency. So I'll come here and say npm install Prisma. npm install Prisma as a dev dependency or as a dev dependency. So yes. While our Prisma is installing, let's check. Model your data with Prisma schema. So what we are going to do is to come to our project. We want to create a new folder. As you can see, we have Prisma /schema.prisma. So we want to create a new project folder called Prisma. And inside this Prisma is where we are going to define our database schemas. Our schemas are our models. Schema is the structure of your database, and model is what you use to interact with the schema, with your database rather, with your table. Let me explain. So schema, let's say user schema is something like user his name is string, age is number, email is string, yes. password is string, role is string, ID should be a number. So this is the schema. A schema is the structure of your table, and this should be user schema. Right, user schema. But the user model is something, let's just say, very good, is something we can use to interact with our table. And not this is just to give our model a type definition. Yeah, okay, our database, this is the structure. So if you are working with this model, these are the properties you have access to. Are you getting me? But when interacting with the database, when you want to do anything with the database, you have to work with the model, not schema. Like I said, the schema is just the structure, and the model is what you just use to. Is what you use to interact with the database. So inside Prisma, I want to create schema.prisma. Schema. Prisma, and this is where we define our schemas. So as you can see, I'm even declaring model here. So here we have our let's see if we can install an extension to make the whole color alignment work. You close schema. That's what's on the download 5-star. Yes. So this package has syntax aligning for schema.prisma, which is this file we created. So as you can see, so we want our model, our schema to have what? It should have ID. ID should be an integer. As you can see from here, as ID, this will tell the guy that it is a primary key, and at default, we want it to auto increment. So which means we don't have to specify value, it should just auto increment. And then what other field do we have? We have email. Email is a string, if I'm correct, and it should be unique, which means nobody else should have this email. One person to one email, and one email to one person. Also, we have name. Yes, let's just say first name. First name should be a string, and we can now say last name as well should be a string. Then we can say middle name. Middle name should be a string as well, but we want the string to be nullable, which means even if they don't specify the middle name, it should still be good. And I said today we are working with, we are creating a post, like a social media system where users can make posts. So we'll be having our post model as well. So if you notice here, I'm declaring my model and my schema together. So this is the schema and this is the model. Prisma already knows how it will handle the whole conversion. Again, my ID should be an integer. So the primary key for my ID, that's ID, and default should auto increment. Right. The title, post does not have title, but it has content. The content should be a string. It is not optional. We don't want to make our own optional. But let's just change this to blog posts. Blog posts. We can now add title, which is a string, and then we can make our content optional. And we can say published. Is it published? I would love to use is published or is published. It should be a boolean, and at default should be false. Again, we have author. Very good. We have author. And who is our author? Our author will be a user. If you check here, you see our author should be a user. Where is user coming from? This user here. It's not a nullable user, so we don't have to, we won't be putting the question mark. And again, we want to say at relations is what? What we have here is the fields. Fields should be author ID. Should be in a string. I got it. Sorry. Author ID, and then the reference should be ID. So what is happening here is that, okay, let's just create our author ID here. Author ID is an integer. Author ID. So what we are doing here is that our post has an ID, title, content, which is not labeled, is published, should be a boolean, and defaults should be false. Author ID should be an integer, and that will be the ID of the user creating the post. That's the author, right? Now we want to define our relationship. We want to say the author should be a user, and which user are we talking about? The user that has. So what you are going to do is to get the value of the author ID, which is this guy, and check for which user has this ID, which is the same thing here. Which user has, you are checking for ID in user, and you are checking for author ID in post. So you are checking for blog post, you are checking for user where the ID is the author ID of that particular post. So this is the primary key. This is the foreign key, which means this foreign key is the ID, or it is the primary key in another table. Foreign key in SQL, in database. In SQL, database generally, when you say a foreign key, it means it is a primary key in another table. And here we are saying the foreign key is ID, and the primary key you are looking for in that table is ID. Okay, the foreign key is author ID, and the primary key is ID. So that's that about the relation. Let me just put small gap here. Yes. And again, you can now say, so if you notice something now, the moment I save this, it is automatically adding this relationship here, which means user can now have multiple blog posts. I would love to call this blog posts plural, which is what? An array of blog posts. Are you getting it? So this is our relationship. Author can be just one user, but blog post can be one, which means this guy, this blog post, has many to one relationship with user, which means many blog posts can belong to one. Many blog posts can belong to one user. Many blog posts can belong to one user. One other model I want to create is comments, so that we won't be confused. Comments, right? Again, this will have the ID, just everything we have here. We have the ID. We don't have title. We have content, but it is not optional. So we would have author ID as well, which is an integer, right? And we would have the blog post ID. Or let me just say post ID is an integer as well. So which means I'm dropping this comment I'm dropping this comment to be I'm dropping this text as a comment to this post commented by this user. So what I'm going to say is our author should be a user that's relation fields author ID for ID should be references. And again, you don't this comment don't just have it doesn't just have what's it called? It doesn't just have an author, it has a post. We can now say post, or let's just say blog post. It's a blog post. And again, we define our relations. Field is what? Post ID. And then reference, we are looking for ID. So if you notice here again, I now have comments. I love to call these comments. I now have comments, which is an array, which means one blog post can have multiple comments. Let me just come here and say, many to one relationship user. Many to one. Let me see. Many to one relationship with user. One to many relationship with comments. Which means one blog post can have many comments. One blog post can have many comments, but many posts can belong to one user. Let me put those comments here as well. I say one to many relationship with posts, with blog posts. And again, one to many relationship with comments, which means another user, a user can also have multiple comments, which means I can comment in multiple posts. Are you getting me now? I can comment in multiple posts. I'll comment in multiple posts. Please give me a moment, please. I need to quickly update something. All right, I'm back. Are we all still connected? So like I was saying, a user has one-to-many relationship to blog posts, which means a user can have multiple blog posts. Also, a user can have multiple comments. For blog posts, many to one, which means many blog posts can belong to one user, one to many for comments, which means one blog post can have multiple comments. And then for comments, we have many to one relationship with user, and also many to one relationship with comments, which means one comment can belong to just one post, but one post can have many comments. Many comments can belong to just one post, but one post can have many comments. Also, this should be, yes, many to one to users as well, which means one user can have many comments, but one comment can belong to one user. Sorry, let me come again. Many comments can belong to one user, and one user can have many comments. So that is that about that. Let's go back to our Prisma documentation. And now we have our declarations. We want to run migration. So what will migration do is as let's start from here. Models in Prisma schema have two main purposes. Represent your table in the underlying database. So this thing we just did here is, the other day we created, if I still have it here, we had to go to our, what's it called, our database, our terminal, which is our SQL terminal, to create a table that has the primary key, the title, content, and so on. But this time around, we are already defining that here. And I think I should have timestamp. I think I should have created that. Let me check here. Timestamp. That's not possible. Timestamp. So using timestamp, yes. Very good. So we are coming here and saying created at. Let's put it here before the relationships. Created at should be what? Should be a date time. Should be okay, using current time. Using current time. We'll come back to timestamp later. Not to take our time. Because I know we are supposed to have something like default current time. Anyways, we have our users, we have blog posts, we have comments. If I come back to space. Okay, so we have our schema. We want to run migration, and that will create your database. Run a migration to create your database tables with Prisma migration. So let's come here. We want to be sure that we've defined everything we need to do. Localhost, database user is root, database password is password, and database name is. So let's run. I'm not sure this will go because. Okay. Let's run this. A data agreement will be loaded from this one loaded from the data source blocking is missing. So data source is like our database connection. Oh, so we were supposed to run this command. npx prisma init data source. Let's do that. npx prisma init data source provider should be MySQL. Prisma already exists. What we are going to do. So let's do that again. So it's created this default file for me, this file. So what I'm going to do is just add my declarations that we created. So these are our schema. We have the clients, we have the DB. So provider is MySQL, and I'm using database viewer. Relational database, connect to your database. You don't want to use, you're not using the database. Okay, let's just use database URL. So we are using MySQL. What I'll just do is just copy this tab. If you can remember, we use database URL for MongoDB as well, or database URI rather. So what we are going to do, again, database URI, let me comment this out. We have the database, we have the username, our username is root, our password is password. Usually for SQL, the port is always 3306. Database, we can say social app, which is all we have here, and schema is public, so yes. So in our Prisma file, we say database URI. So Prisma actually created a variable for us the other time, which was this one, database URL. And I think it is very much better if you follow that. So I'm going to copy this, put it here. We're not using Postgres, we are using MySQL. So again, here we are using database URL. So we are saying our database source, the provider is MySQL, and URL should get it. You should get it from env database URL, and we are getting our this guys here. So we want to create our migration file. Sorry, our migration file. Yes, npx prisma migrate dev. So cannot reach database. All right. So if database is not working, let's use one to, or let me see if my database is running. So for those that already have MySQL installed, just use this. It should work. But because I uninstalled MySQL after our MySQL class, it was clashing with the one I have already. I uninstalled it, and I already have an instance Docker, so it should be good now. Yes, I'm good now. And so my database, if you see here, you see your database is now sync with your schema. So my database in MySQL is now sync with my schema. If I I installed this app the other day, Workbench. Okay, MySQL Workbench. So you can see my database password. If you come to, let me close this. Sorry. If I come to, I should be, yes, schemas, I should see social app, which is this one we just created. If we check our tables, you can see we have blog posts. And if we check the columns, you can see we have ID, we have title, we had, should be able to see this thing as Okay, now we have our blog post table, and I'm not so cool with the name, way this thing name these things, but we'll come back to that later. We have the ID, which is an integer. Is it nullable? We have no. We should have default is auto. Okay, extra is auto increment. Let me just open this thing in PHP my admin. I'm very much inclined with that. So if I come to PHP my admin, then if I come to what's it called? Social app, which is this actual one we are doing. Then if I come to blog posts, you can see my table. I have ID, I have title, content is published and auto ID, just like we have in our schema. ID, title, content is published and auto ID. And if I come to comment as well, I have content, auto ID, post ID. Come to user, I have everything here. But I'm not so cool with the way this thing named my data table. So let's check the documentation again. You know, if you can remember in our previous class, I mentioned that it is always good if your table name is in plural of what you expect in your of what you expect in your table. So if you're expecting users in your table name should be users. Sorry, get started. I'll just search for table name. Table name. Table name. So yes, at map comment. So what I'm going to do is just come here. Say at blog post. Sorry. Okay. So by formatting, it took it down. Coming here as we are saying it should be users. Coming here again, I'm saying this should be comments. You can see if I use blog post, it is already telling me that the model with database table blog post could not be defined because another model of view with this name already exists. So we can use the same name for multiple tables. And let's run our migration again. Then if I come back to my PHP my admin, you can see we now have blog posts. We have comments. We have users. Are you getting me? We have blog posts, we have comments, we have users. Blog posts, comments, and users. So let's go to the main thing. How do we query? How do we create? And how do we let's do something. Let's just create an endpoint where users can sign up. Or is it to sign up? Let's just create a basic. What's the time? It's almost 9. So what we are going to do, we are going to be creating I'm supposed to have password here. But in the meantime, let's create another table called group, another schema called group, just like our previous group projects. I don't want us to go too far this evening anymore. Group, and everything still remains the same. Also, to be a string, we have okay, so the way I pasted that thing, sorry, It's already added here. So our book schema should have just the name or the title. Is it title we are working with or name? I think name. So that's the name of the book and the author. Name of the book and the author. Let me run my questions again. So yes, what I'm going to do is let's create a service. Just come here and say, just to be fast, service.ts. Just like we have it here. Sorry, just like we have it here. So if I come to overview after I've done with schema here, I want to query. So this is basically code. All right, so all the examples are based on the I'm pushing example schema. So what we are going to do is to say, just like we have here, we want to say await Prisma as our Prisma client, and it should be somewhere here. Correct. So let's just copy this. Come to our service, and we have our Prisma here. So we have the Prisma client folder, module rather, where we are importing the Prisma client and the Prisma, I think that's the type. We are not using it here, so we can just remove it. All we need here is the Prisma client, and we have our Prisma client here. What we are going to do, Prisma client. What we are going to do, well, so what we are going to do here is to say Prisma dot books dot book dot find menu. So we want to get the menu, and this will give us a list of books. A list of books. Then we can say this method should return a promise. We really need that. No. Anyways, our results will be a list of books. So as you can see, we have the name, the string, the author, and these two guys here means it is an array. We're returning an array of our results, return results. And here we are expecting the ID should be a number. Right. So what we can do is to say constant book is what? Await Prisma dot find one. Okay, book dot find unique, and find unique expects, I believe, expects, let me see. Expect an object, and in our object, you can say where the ID is ID. And don't forget, if you are doing this, you can just say ID. So find unique, we return with the book or not. So we want to just say return book. That's for find book. To create book, we want to say constant book is what? Await Prisma.book that creates. We want to create just one book, and these are the data algorithms. we remove this. We want to create just one book to receive the data. That's like the payload of a book. We have the name, we have the author. And don't forget, I said if the key and the variable name has the same name, you can just do it this way. And likewise for author, you can do something like this. And it will return us a book. So we won't have to be finding book after creating it. Or we just need to say, let's just even say we return. Okay, the name is expected to be a string. Author is expected to be a string as well. But the delete the ID should be a number. You want to say await prisma dot book dot delete, and this is going to receive an object. Inside this object, you have our where object, where ID. I believe you already know what that means, so we can remove this other two. And then to update, okay, here we can now see constant pool as well. Await prisma dot pool dot update, and this place, let's see. Update. So as you can see, to receive an object, these two objects expect the where and the data. So the where will be where ID is ID. And don't forget that still this. And then we are putting the data. Very good, just like this. And we want ID to be a number. New name should be a string. New author should be a string. Again, we are removing this as well. Since we are returning book just like that, you can just return it like this. And everything should still work. So what I want to do to test this guy is to, just like we did the other day, I want to start quick function. Or let's just say quick start. Very good. So I want to quick start. And I want to say npx cs node. Or let me just say, I believe I have ts node. Let's see if it will work. Node src service.cs. So we have the error. Something is not fine. So let's say ts node. cs node is not fine. Let's say npx ts node something. As you can see, we have an empty array. So I'm running this TypeScript file. We are getting an empty array. Why? Because I'm getting all books and everything is empty. So if I want to create a book, I can just come here and say constant book. So I'll wait, create book. And this expects, let me do that before getting the books. And this expects the name. Oh, very good. So this is the name of the book and this is the name of the author. After the book is being created, we are getting, or let's just say constant pool. Say console.log. Let's do something here. Let's say this should be results. This two should be results. So what we are doing here, we are creating a book. This will return us a book, definitely. And we want to log the book to the console. So let's come here. As you can see, we have ID, we have name, we have author. If I come back to our database, let me really book. Here I have books. You can see author and name. You can see author and name. If I then come to, we've created a book. Let's create another one. Let's just create another one to make it smooth. Yes, so on this terminal again and reload. You can see it is very much easier to see these things here. We have them as a table. We have the ID, author, and name. We have the here as well. We have the name, the author, and the name of the book. So if I want to get all books, let me just comment the other one out. As you can see, we now have our 2 books. Here we are getting it. Still working with ORMs. Everything is working as expected. After that, we've done forget, we've done for create. We want to find a single book. We want to find a book. So I wait to find book. We are passing in the ID of the book. Let's run. You can see we have our book, which is 1. Let's run the second one again. Let's find the second book. And yes, we have our second. All right, so find book is working. For delete book, we want to delete book with ID 1. I don't think we are expecting any results. So after deleting the book, I want to get our books, get all books. You can see we now have just 1 book. We've deleted the first book. Now we want to update the second book. Here we'd have to change this ID to 2. Why? Because the book is with ID 1 is no longer existing. So yeah. We want to update the book that has ID 2 to this new name, this author's name. You can see it is now updated. If I come here and reload, you can see the book is now updated, and even the one we deleted is no longer there. So that is that. I want to push this code base to GitHub. I noticed some of us had issue with the GitHub. We're not able to upload our previous class to GitHub. Sorry, the last assignment, which was the product code base, we're not able to upload it to GitHub. So I'll be taking that again. In my git ignore file, you see I already have this node to skip environmental variables in. So basically you want to create a, let me just move this to class. You create a .git ignore file, git ignore file, and you want to ignore node modules. You want to ignore .env. You want to install .dist. We won't be pushing our dist folder as well. And I think that's all. Our Prisma module go. So yes, ignore the node modules, ignore .env, and ignore dist. So what we are going to do, I have VS Code GUI here. That's graphical user interface. I'll just say publish to GitHub. I want this thing to be Dive Prisma Express. I want to upload it to a public repo. Yes. We are good on that. If you come back here, you notice that this file, this folder, the node modules folder, the .env, they have a very faded color, which means they are not part of my source control. Means they are not part of my source control. If I come to GitHub, here are zero dive, what's the name of the project again? Dive Prisma Express. You can see we have our Prisma folder. We have our migrations. This is the migration the file created. We visit this file later. You can see it's created an SQL file. Alternatively, to drop content. So, in our next class, I'll explain what's happening in the migration files for us. So yes, does anyone have any question? Does anyone have any question? We'd have to retake everything we did on Prisma in our next class and moving forward to understanding TypeScript better. Or do we have anyone that has any question? Or is there someone that can? All right, Stephen.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Mr. Ayomide. Thanks for
Yes.
the lecture. It was so impactful. So my question is, at what point can a developer choose between using Prisma or Mongo, I mean Mongoose, or MySQL? Okay, someone have already asked in the last class, but this Prisma, at what point do you need to use Prisma over maybe Mongoose, or I don't know which other one should we compare it to? That's my question.
All right. Mongoose work with MongoDB. So if you're using MongoDB, you'd have to use Mongoose. But if you're using a relational database like SQL, like Progress SQL, ProgressQL, we have two popular relational database. We have MySQL and we have ProgressQL. Both of them uses SQL queries. So since we're already doing MySQL, it's very easy to understand Progress if you want to pick that later on. And the purpose of us using an ORM like Prisma is so that we don't have to be writing my SQL queries like this, just like this one. They've done that for us. If you check what we did here, we just have to call this way. This thing, what will happen here is that this thing will execute an SQL query on our database. So everything we did here, let me show you an example. This update book, these 4 lines of code or 3 lines of code is the same thing I did here. Here I wrote query, I added all those things, and after running the query, I still had to find book. So this find book method I did here was still the same thing with this to come in here and say, let me remove this. So let me say, let's remove this. So if you notice something here, I have the update and I have the find. Are you getting me? So instead of having to do all these things, having to handle all these things, we have ORMs. And if you notice in our ORMs, we were able to define our relationships. We were able to define our relationships, though we didn't have an example of this because it is very much complex. So we were able to define our relationships, which you see more details about that in our next class. With that, with the raw SQL, it's not that you can't do it, but you'd have to. This may take a couple of days before you are able to finish the whole relationship selection and so on. ORMs basically make it easier to interact with your database, and they are well optimized. So if you are doing something like this, you know how well to fetch the query, to run the query, that it won't affect your system performance. So they are already well optimized. Just a wrapper for things you don't want to be worrying about when building a very complex system.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So do we have anyone that can give us a summary of what we did today? Is there anyone that can give us a summary of what we did today? I guess no. Or a small overview. All right, Daniel.
I did not start the class from the beginning, but at least when I came, you thought about TypeScript, and you said it's like a version of JavaScript that we can use to give the type of data, and we use this TypeScript. You showed example of how to use the TypeScript, and then you talked about ORM, which is Prisma. Basically, that's what I can say. Sure. That's what I can say.
Yes, TypeScript is just rewriting JavaScript code with type annotations. So you are strongly defining your types. And again, we work with Prisma ORM to interact with our database. So any project you are doing, if you are, as a backend developer, any project you are doing, you'll be using ORMs to interact with your database. I had to explain to us what SQL queries look like so you know what is happening under the hood. If I come here and if you notice after my schema and I run the what's that command again? This Prisma migrate dev command, it will create a new migration. And what does the migration do? Any change I make in this schema.prisma, it is going to convert it to an SQL query. So let me show you something. If you come to these migrations, these are the migrations generated by this command, and this everything generated here are based on what's defined here. So if I come here, you can see I have create table users, just like I explained the other day. Create table nodes. So create table user, right? You have the ID, teacher, not no, blah 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 blah. Everything is just there. And we have the unique index user email key, which we are telling, so I didn't have that here. We are telling this table that email should be unique. And index means we may want to find this user with this email. So you should keep the email somewhere close that you use to identify that this is the user. And also primary key ID. We don't have that here as well. Okay, we have primary key here for and many other things that you don't want to be worrying yourself about. Same thing as blog posts, same thing as comments. And again, the foreign keys. I was talking about foreign keys. Author table, blog post, add constraints, something foreign key. And then the foreign key is author ID. References is user, that's user stable. I'm looking for the ID on deletes, restrict, on updates, cascade. And if we check here again, there was a place where I renamed the tables. All right. So instead of this thing renaming the table, what happened was that it dropped the table, drop table blog post. So what this means is that delete table blog posts, delete table blog post, delete table users, and then create new tables with these names that are specified. Are you getting me? So what is happening behind the scene is that it is converting our schema, everything we are doing with Prisma, it is converting it to SQL queries and executing. Again, this was when we created our book schema, create table books. So instead of you having to worry about SQL queries, you can just use an ORM to interact with your query and with your database rather, and not worry about SQL queries. But again, it is always good to keep it in mind how SQL queries are being executed, so that if in the future you are not satisfied with how an ORM is handling your data or how it is fetching your data, you can be able to debug it and know, okay, this query is not supposed to be this way. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
So does anyone else have any question? All right. That will be all for today's class. By Friday, we'll be talking more about ORM, which is this Prisma ORM. And on Friday as well, we'll be working with, we have users table here, our schema. We'll be working with authentication. Users will be able to sign up, log in. After logging in, they'll be able to create posts and comment on posts and so on. So yes. Thank you, everyone. We'll be meeting